Thank you, Natalie. So good morning also from my side. My name is Barney Stechmann. I'm working for EU from Sweden, and together with my colleague Viri at BBMI, it's our pleasure to kind of present what we did in terms of the international symposia, which took place mostly last year. So just to give you a brief overview to begin with, RI-VIS organized international symposia with target communities in other world regions, and to facilitate a collaborative engagement with other colleagues working at infrastructures, not only in Europe, but the different world regions that we have. And originally, these meetings were planned as in-person meetings in South Africa, Brazil, and Australia. And we actually had finalized the organization of the in-person meeting in Cape Town, and we were halfway through the organization of an in-person meeting in Campinas in Brazil when the pandemic started. And then initially we kind of postponed these in-person meetings because then we thought after the first wave, everything would be fine. Nobody told us at that time that there will be multiple waves. So the South African event was supposed to be held in February 2020, was postponed by 1 year, and then ultimately we changed all these symposia into virtual events. They were all held over 2 or 3 days each, and they all took place in 2021 ultimately. And then just a few weeks ago, we were approached by our colleagues at the Kremlin Plus initiative with the idea to also have a similar symposium virtually with a focus on Russian infrastructure. So this was organized shortly before Christmas. The aim of these symposia was to raise awareness of individual infrastructures in the target regions. So European infrastructures are not widely known outside of Europe. And also from the European perspective, was really a great opportunity to learn about infrastructures that are established and operational in the other world regions. We also aimed to identify measures to mitigate current challenges of international cooperation between research infrastructures and to initiate, where possible, new or strengthening existing collaborations with the aim also to initiate networks in a sustainable way beyond the lifetime of this project, and also in a way collaborations where both sides can often benefit. The target audience of these symposia were mostly delegates from research infrastructures from Europe and the target regions, as well as delegates from science policy or funding organizations, but also because these were virtual meetings, we opened them up to also individual scientists and institutions in worldwide. As I said, initially these meetings were planned as in-person meetings, so that this, I think, would be a great opportunity to go to the places and reach out locally to the scientific communities and visit some of these local infrastructures. But as I said, this was not possible, so we changed it to a virtual format. And the good thing about the virtual format was that it's now widely established worldwide to have these virtual video conferences and symposia. So basically allowed us to have these events despite an ongoing pandemic. So we kind of rescued what we planned. And to be fair, though, it's actually easy to bring together participants and speakers if you would like to engage with multiple countries. Otherwise, I think what we often see is when we organize in-person meetings in one country that the attendees predominantly come from this one country, whereas for speakers, you can kind of try to ensure kind of a geographical spread. But in virtual conferences, you just have a wider balance among the attendees. Because no travel was needed, we could obviously significantly reduce the carbon footprint, which is also not unimportant these days with the looming climate catastrophe ongoing, and especially also the cost to organize these symposia was much reduced. We also asked the the attendees for their feedback, which is then easy in a virtual format, and see whether they were satisfied or not, and also the time savings for attendees and organizers, especially if you invite high-level speakers which are really busy and pressed for time, to ask them to join for a few hours or a day. A virtual symposium is much easier to convince them rather than asking them to, let's say, going to Australia back and forth. It's three days of traveling plus 1 or 2 days being there. It's so there are advantages to this virtual format. Then when we started, we looked at the virtual meetings that took place, but what we observed is very often it's just one presentation after another, and that's basically it. So that you have mostly presentations. Maybe you have some sort of networking which takes place on Zoom, where you kind of, let's say, randomly assigned to breakout rooms. You end up with people you don't know talking about all kinds of things. So we thought, okay, we need to kind of find solutions where we can allow and facilitate as much as possible the interactions among the attendees. So it's not only giving presentations, but how can we stimulate that the attendees, all of them, proactively can take an active part in these symposia. So we looked at different commercial platform solutions, and we selected one which we tested for the first event and then stick to it also for the other events. It's an all-in-one event platform that allowed not only that these presentations, which are hosted by Zoom, can be integrated and streamed on the platform. Attendees could also dial in directly via Zoom, but to have this integrated, you can also submit questions directly there. You can start conversations. I will go through these functionalities also in the next slides, but there's an opportunity to have a virtual booth where the infrastructures and the initiatives can present themselves. But as I said, the main focus was really the attendee engagement, to have community boards where people chat, kind of initiate novel topics that they would like to talk about, share articles, photos. You can have one-on-one chats. You have icebreaker sessions to really bring people together. Online registration was facilitated, also run through the platform. And we had this platform in addition to more kind of traditional website that was, all the information was also available via the RI-VIS website. And then the attendees could kind of add their profiles for networking. So for example, here just an example, you have all the speakers and attendees, and they could voluntarily share as much information as possible, their position, their organization, their initiative, kind of a bio sketch. And the more information they share, the higher the chances are that somebody else finds your profile interesting, and then you can, as you can see here, write a chat or even organize a video conferencing and have a chat bilateral or with other people. Also, the virtual exhibitions that I mentioned, we offered them to individual infrastructures or initiatives. We had one for training, we had one for the ICRI conference, individual institutions to present their initiatives, especially if they don't have a presentation in the program. This is just another way or another format to present your initiative. So the attendees can go there whenever they want, so it's very convenient, and then they can learn more about the initiatives, watch videos, download handouts and other marketing content, or even experience live showcases. And we had roughly between 14 to 19 booths at all these symposia. The advantage, I would say, is that it doesn't take much time to set up these booths. So we encourage everybody to kind of add the information, and once you've done it, then it's kind of easy and straightforward. So to kind of prepare your booth for the second and third symposium. The disadvantage is slightly that you don't know who's visiting your booth. When you have an in-person meeting, you see someone and you can just directly talk to this person and ask questions and talk to this person. In a virtual format, this is not possible. You have to rely on that somebody actually actively reaches out to you. But there are multiple ways to do it. They can add you chat, they can ask for a video meeting, etc. So this is something that was also integrated in this symposium platform in addition, as a different format or in addition to the presentations. Then another one was the networking session. This is more complicated to kind of have and organize in these virtual meetings. At that time, it was really, most of these networking sessions took place via Zoom. And as I said, you just end up in a room with a lot of people. You have no control who you'd like to talk to. And so we used one of the commercial platforms, the Wonder app, that we will also use today later at 5. So don't miss it. Try it out. It's really worth it. And the good thing is that you can actually, as you can see in the picture below, you can move around the avatar and join, let's say, tables that are kind of assigned to different topics. So if you have a topic that you're interested in, they could just join the people who share the interest in a certain topic. Or you can see the different people. You can see who they are. You can see BioSketch, etc. And then you can say, okay, that's an interesting person I like to talk to. And then you can just move your avatar to the avatar of the other person, and automatically you have a video conferencing bubble that opens up, and other people can join, and you can also lock the bubble. So I think it's very convenient. Overall, there were not so many people joining. This could have multiple reasons. One is that you have to change the platform, especially for the second and third, even in Latin America and Australia, there you have the time zone difference. So either the networking session is quite early in the morning or quite late at night. So I think this prevents people from joining, or it's a new platform which and people hesitate to use it. But those who joined find this quite a useful experience, and I would really recommend this also for future events. The virtual tours is probably one of my favorite formats in these in-person meetings. They're really ideal and a nice addition to these in-person meetings, but they're really challenging to kind of realize virtually. But we had one virtual meeting at the Latin America Europe Symposium. We had a virtual tour of the synchrotron light source Sirius and Campinas in Brazil, which was organized with the local organizers and in conjunction with the EU Symposium. And the attendees had the opportunity to look behind the scene of the Caterite and Manaka beamlines. So I think that was really a great experience, but they're actually difficult to organize. But yeah, in this case, that was really a nice experience. We promoted the symposium with these promotion videos, which are also available on YouTube. Yeah, and in the following slide, I just go briefly and kind of present the different symposia. The first one, as I said, was the one in Africa, initially locally organized with our colleague, Professor Trevor Sewell at the Cape Town University. It was the first event, so all the platforms that I just showed you were kind of the first time that we tested those. Everything worked nicely, and looking at the post-symposium feedback, the attendees were very happy and satisfied. Overall, we had 133 attendees who actually attended the meetings. We had many more registered participants, but 133 that actually joined. If you look at the distribution, we have predominantly European attendees, and this was something that we wanted to kind of change in the following symposia. I think this is quite small, but this just to show that for each of the meetings we prepared kind of a poster with a program, and here you can see Africa was in the same time zone as Europe, so we had 2 days and quite long days, around 6 hours. And the structure was that after the welcome of the participants by the local organizers, we started in the presentation of the RI-VIS project. We started off this symposium with presentations from funders to kind of introduce the different infrastructure landscapes in the different regions, which really set the scenes. Then we usually had sessions with presentations of individual infrastructures, and we try to have a geographical balance between the infrastructures from the target regions and Europe, and also covering all the different scientific disciplines, and also have a balance in the gender of the speakers. We conclude the first day with a panel discussion, again, mostly with delegates and panelists from funding organizations who really look at the current situations, what are the opportunities, but also what are the bottlenecks. On the second day, we started with a session on global infrastructures or success stories between of bi-regional collaborations. Then we continued the presentation of the individual infrastructures and then conclude the entire meeting with a second panel discussion where the panelists focus on the future. What can we do to kind of promote more bi-regional collaborations between infrastructures, and how can we mitigate the current challenges? The second symposium was in Latin America, originally planned in Campinas, Brazil, locally, but then switched to a virtual event. And this was co-organized with our colleagues at the EU LAC-West Infra project, which was very helpful because they really had the connections to the funders and the infrastructure community locally in Latin America. So this was really helpful also to kind of get a wider distribution of the different Latin American countries. And if you look at the number of the attendees, we have a higher number of attendees and also a very nice balance between the European and Latin American attendees. So I think this was really, really helpful to have another initiative with the local connections into this region. Due to the time zone difference, we had 3 days, but each day was slightly shorter. But the overall structure was pretty much the same. We started off with a welcome speech and then the presentation about the infrastructural landscapes in Latin America and Europe, and then continued with case studies and presentations of individual infrastructures. And then we also included 2 panel discussions with the same kind of topic, looking at the current situation and then looking ahead. And here we had several thematic workshops where infrastructures could basically focus more, because overall we can try to cover different scientific fields, but in a thematic workshop you can really look into, let's say, bioimaging or microbiology or structural biology, and really have different presentations around the same topic. Then I mentioned also the virtual tour at Sirius that we had for this event. And another thing that was unique to this event was the simultaneous translation, as English was not the official language for most of the participants. The majority of speakers and attendees were native Spanish speakers, with the exceptions of those from Brazil who are obviously speaking Portuguese. So we decided to offer simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish and vice versa by 3 native speaking experts. So basically the attendees and the speakers could either present and talk in English or in Spanish, and then the attendees could then use the simultaneous translation, which was integrated into the Zoom platform. And I think this was really helpful. I think most of or many of the speakers and panelists made use of this. And this is something that I would also recommend for future events, if English is not the official language, to reconsider offering simultaneous interpretation. And the last event of the 3 events that we originally planned was organized recently in October with our colleagues in Australia, where we had a larger group of local organizers, which was also different to the previous meetings. Here the challenge was actually, as expected, the huge time difference. Again, we had 3 days and very short days, 3-4 hours. Overall, we had 138 attendees, many more registrations, but we have a nice geographical balance between the attendees from Europe and Australia. And again, it's a similar program organization, but this time we work more with the keynote speeches that we didn't have in the first 2 editions. And in addition to presentations from individual infrastructure, we slightly changed it, and we had more thematic sessions. For example, one day was more on the life sciences, and others was more on climate change and environmental challenges. And then again, we had a session on global research infrastructures. Again, because I think they were very useful, the panel discussions, and the networking sessions. And then after these meetings, then we were approached, as I said, by Kremlin Plus, and with the idea to organize a one-day virtual symposium with a focus on Russia. That was really a challenge because it was quite last minute, and I think they really did a great job to put together a nice program with just in 2 or 3 weeks, basically. And we had presentations of 11 Russian infrastructures and 7 European infrastructures. And this was really, I think, a nice model also for future symposium, maybe after the lifetime of RI-VIS, where we could team up with other projects and have something similar for other world regions. So all these symposium was really great. Many thanks to the speakers and panelists who took their time with really nice speakers and panelists, but also a very special thanks to the local co-organizers. I start with the first event, Professor Trevor Sewell. He was just on his own, so it was really great help here. And he basically had to organize 2 meetings, one an in-person meeting, and then afterwards, after this was cancelled, a virtual meeting. And this just by one single person. That was really a great job. So thanks a lot to Trevor. For Latin America, we had both the kind of the local organizing team for the in-person event. So Anna and Dora were really helpful. And then when we decided to have a virtual meeting, then it was really a key to the success of this meeting to have the connection with our colleagues at the EU LACRES Infra project. And Australia was completely different again, where we had a large local organizing committee, and special thanks to Karina, who was kind of the chair of the Australian local organizing committee here. And then I mentioned the last meeting, Russia, our colleagues at the Kremlin Plus really did a great job and on such a short notice to organize a full virtual meeting with focus on Russia. And with this, I stop here and thank you for your attention, and I'm glad to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Barna. Are there any questions from the audience? If you would like to ask a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to ask live. I've got one question from Claudia again. Claudia, please.
Barney, thank you. That's really a great summary of all the work of the symposium. It was interesting to see how we learn in the process from all the symposium, and I wanted to ask you about the importance of the setting up this organizing committee, which I think in the Australian case was, as you said, in the Latin America we have the help of EU LACRES Infra, what make life a lot easier in that way. But in the Australian, I think the international, this setting up this collaborative committee was really crucial. I wonder if you wanted to say how this was achieved and what did we learn in the process?
Yeah, I think that really the key to the success of these symposia is the local team. So we could kind of provide all the platforms, share our experience when it comes to the program and give the program some structure. But if it's really about finding topics, and then you really have to rely on the local colleagues that you have. They have other topics that are interesting and relevant for them, and it's good to know. And also they have the connections to the funders. If you would like to invite speakers and panelists, that if somebody from Europe approaches someone somewhere else, they're like hesitating, say, okay, what is this request? But if you have some kind of a local champion, then this creates trust, and this was really key. At the beginning with Trevor, I mean, it was really great job, but it's just too much for one person. But this was that we realized. So afterwards, we thought having a larger local organizing team kind of distributes the workload a little bit better. Yeah, for the Latin American committee was kind of indirectly through this EU LACRES Infra project, but then to have all these connections in the different countries was key there. And for the Australian event, okay, it was just one country, but it's like a continent, and each of these states is is similar to countries. So it's really important to have a larger community there as well, from different infrastructures and also different regions and universities. And they also had, it was very helpful because they have all the connections to the high level speakers and funders. So I think this is absolutely key. And yeah, you cannot underestimate their contribution.
Thank you very much. Susan, you also have a question?
Well, not so much a question, just a comment, and I'd just like to say that as Barney noted, having these organizing committees is really key, not only to having a successful symposium, but it also forms a foundation that can be used after the symposium has finished to maintain communications and to look for opportunities for further activity. And this has been crucial and exemplary in the Latin America situation, where obviously we've had the support of EU LAC-RIS-Infra, but we've had that pre-existing organization in the Latin American countries where we can capitalize on opportunities as they arise. And I think it's really very important that we don't lose momentum after these symposia, that there is some mechanism to keep the activities going and the enthusiasm going forward. And that usually is centered around these committees.
Thank you, Susan. I think that's also reflected in a very nice comment we've had from Susie Robinson in the chat. Susie, we very much appreciate the other way around as well, all of the support from the Australian local organising team. And we're keen to keep communication channels open, even though the project is coming to an end. Most of us are still continuing our roles in various infrastructures and are very keen to keep the activity going.